thing, I wanted to talk about this for a long time. The point was just feeling like the right moment to present this one, because I might not want to do it like before it's ready or before it's perfect. You know, I mean, try to ensure all the variables are lined up correctly and that, in the ducks even, and attempt to create the perfect video on this topic. Control. Yes. This is a hugely deep issue, and to understand something about the way I see the world, it's necessary to, consider this control thing. Because I came to the conclusion that control is, in fact, the entire game. If you ever find yourself in a situation where things don't make sense, the underlying pattern is one of control. I mean, have you ever been with a group of people that do things that don't make sense? And this sometimes happens when you join a new company, for example. I know I've worked many places in my time, and yes, I would keep going to a new place and I would look at it and say, why are they doing this? What's the reason for this? It doesn't make sense. We've all been there, I'm sure. You might look at decisions that were made that are counter to the assumed end goal. And you look at it and go, well, if this is what they want to achieve, why are they doing that? And it's because the actual stated goal of the team or the company or whatever it is not the true goal. Because my theory is that if you don't chaperone it, let's put it that way, if you don't if you don't, if you are not careful about control, maybe that's a better way of putting it. If you're not careful about it, it takes on a life of its own. It becomes a thing unto itself. It becomes something that kind of consumes all. Regardless of what the supposed purpose of the enterprise is. So I've tried this out over the years, and so why is this happening? And if you frame the behavior of the individual or of the group, of the team, whatever it is, if you frame it in terms of control, it can make all perfect sense at that point. Have you ever worked with somebody who's, one day just, they do something and you go, I don't understand why they said that. I don't understand why they did that. It's like I thought I thought this is what we were trying to achieve, and they've just done something that just seems to be stating the total opposite. Right? You can frame it in terms of control. One story that comes to mind was when I was in academia, and I had a desire to do research, believe it or not. I mean, because, I've got lots of ideas. I don't know if they'll at this point ever actually see the light of day, all right? But there's research ideas. I did some research work. I can remember, though, that there was another person at the faculty who had done some research, of their own. And I was talking about how I'd just been doing some research, and something. And their immediate response was, oh, well, that type of thing isn't really important. And it's like, hang on, I thought that getting papers published was actually important. Apparently today, it's not important. He's like, and presumably it must have been important on a previous day when he was doing research. That particular day, whichever day it was, it must have been important. But today, research is not important. And so you go, let's pick that apart a minute. It's like, what's going on? And if you boil it down to control, it's quite easy to understand. The research that he had put out, he was in control of. And so therefore, that was all quite comfortable. However, if you've got some other person doing research, then what control have they got of the research of someone else? Not a lot. So this could create a kind of discomfort within a person, especially if they're very controlling, and as a result, come out with this flippant comment. And of course, if it was probed later, it might be, they claim it was flippant, they say, well, it's just a joke, I wasn't really serious or this, and you can backtrack, but you still have to question why. Why did they sort of joke the entire opposite, control. So if you've ever been in a situation where it seems to be one rule for others and a different rule for you, look at it in terms of the flow of control. Now, I'm not very good at playing this game, as perhaps you can tell, because it's taken me a long time to figure this out, and maybe there's a bunch of you going, oh, it's obvious I knew about that, but I don't know. Maybe it's not obvious. I think you can frame anything this way. I'm going to give another example, a sort of more contemporary example that we're kind of aware of. It's trying to understand Elon Musk. I've been analysing Elon Musk for a while, as in looking at the statements that he's been making and so on. I'm watching his journey. The journey from someone who had the appearance, at least, of being, a fabulous engineer, okay, which is fine. I don't know. I'm not going to say no to that. I don't have the data really, but this is what is declared. You have to remember that Elon Musk does have a lot of people who work for him, so it's not necessarily a given that he's a genius engineer. It just could be that he, has geniuses that he works with as well. But it's portrayed that way. Why? Oh, you could look at it in terms of control. If you are using other people to do things in a company, right? Using talent of other people to advance your company or your enterprise or so on. You are, in the nature of doing that, giving up control. It's one of the things that you have to do. So there are two possibilities when somebody presents themselves as being the genius, is that they are, and they do everything themselves. And certainly Elon Musk presents that, as he's taken over Twitter, for example. It seems that every single thing that needs to be done at Twitter, he's done personally. You sort of get this picture, don't you? It's just like he's sitting there with his laptop or whatever and goes, I want to increase the character limit to, 1024 characters or whatever. And then there he goes. I'm working on the code. I didn't need a whole team of engineers, you see. I could do it all myself. I don't really think that's that's the reality. Although I might be wrong. But certainly, for somebody who is, the control is a big part of their game, which may or may not be the case for Elon Musk. You can draw your own conclusion. But one thing that you can see is that where that arises, they are going to project an air of control, that they are in control. They want to show that they're in control. They want to feel in control. And everything that they might do might be guided by the control. So I have a feeling this might be a way of making sense of the comings and goings in Elon Musk's mind as he's done this Twitter thing. I mean, let's go back to the early days of the Twitter thing. So, I mean, one possible way of looking at it, and I'm just guessing, I haven't spoken to Elon Musk and unlikely to ever speak to Elon Musk. And if I did speak to Elon Musk, I'd probably be very reluctant to ask these questions because they might be they might be viewed dimly. Let's put it that way. As much as I'm not, I don't have a fear of conflict, there's also no need to have unnecessary conflict. So probably just for thinking about it might be better if I don't ever have a conversation with Elon Musk. But anyway, leaving that to one side for a minute, I'm just giving my impressions. So if we go back to the early days of the whole Elon Musk Twitter saga, Elon Musk was basically an individual who used Twitter just the same as everybody else. So, fine. And he liked tweeting, and he liked the responses, like many people do, that's fine. But if you think about it, this wonderful tool that allows people to have a platform in which to express themselves is a bit like the goose that laid golden eggs. Now, the story of the goose that lays golden eggs is a hugely influential, in my mind, thing. It has influenced me a great deal because I wondered, why would it be that the person who has the golden egg-laying goose would destroy the goose? And the thing that's often said is, well, it was because he wanted to get at the gold more quickly. Right, that's okay, that's true. I actually think that it's a warning about over-control, which does actually fit with that. But there's a subtle point with that, is that if you are someone who owns a golden egg-laying goose, and every day you wait for that golden egg so that you can do the next thing that you want to do, so you can enjoy the egg, let's put it that way, and enjoy all the things that the egg brings forth. In this case, I'm applying it to, you tweet, and then the responses from the tweet. It's a similar idea. You interact with the platform gives you a little egg. Aren't you good? There's your egg, here's your reward. But if you are doing that with your golden egg laying goose, it does raise the very interesting question of who's the boss. I mean, you could think that you're the boss because you own the golden egg laying goose. But the goose might have a different idea about it. It might be, you look after me. and I lay eggs for you. It's payment for services rendered is a way of looking at it, right? Well, if you look at it that way, then the goose becomes the boss. And if the goose becomes the boss, then the person who owns the goose might resent that. They might start to get irritated about it. No, never mind how wonderful the eggs are. You see, this is the point. It's control. If you have more eggs than you need, more golden eggs than you need, what is the value in another golden egg? You can actually view that the value of the goose declines over time because every egg that it lays compared to all the eggs that you have becomes a smaller and smaller percentage. I mean, in terms of growth. We have an obsession with growth, don't we? What is that obsession with growth? We could frame that in terms of control, and I don't know if you can see that, but it's like, if you're talking about the golden egg laying goose, there's only one goose and it lays one golden egg every day. So in terms of growth, it's actually tapering off. So what that means is that the goose is something that influences you in your life. You have to look after the golden egg laying goose, and that needing to look after it remains constant. The eggs that you get remain constant, but in terms of the contribution to you in your life, that becomes less and less. So I suppose at a certain point you go, this isn't enough anymore. Now maybe that's what happened with Elon Musk. It's like his golden egg laying goose was Twitter, but he didn't own Twitter. So because as a result he didn't own Twitter, it means he wasn't in control. He wasn't in control of the goose. It was someone else's goose that was giving him golden eggs. So maybe, we can deal with the problem of the diminishing returns by owning the goose. Another way of looking at it is to say, well, if I'm not in control of the platform, I could be silenced. And so that's the thing about the free speech thing, is like the undeniable thing, the non-negotiable is it must be free speech. The problem is that free speech is not that simple. I mean, you could say free living as much as free speech. It's like, let everybody just do what they want to do. We could say that should be a non-negotiable, right? You could try that. That's an anarchy, and it doesn't work. That's why we have whole systems of law. We have huge effort placed in society to create rules by which we live. I mean, we're not even talking about talking here. I mean, we're talking about just breathing, living and breathing and working and earning money and ownership and transfer of things and the laws that should not be broken to respect each other's property and person and all of this stuff. It's complicated. But it doesn't become simpler just because it's speech. Right? It means that free speech, to put it, the great way of expressing it is to say that free speech doesn't mean freedom from responsibility. I could go on about that, but that's not what this topic is about. But the point is that you could see how a concern about being silenced might exist because Elon Musk was not in control of Twitter. Therefore, Twitter had the power to silence Elon Musk if Elon Musk said something that was against the terms and conditions. And maybe, it's a theory, maybe that irked Elon, and so he sought some kind of solution. And that would be to buy Twitter. So I think that's probably where it came from this desire of control. But the problem is, you see, that once you start saying that, I mean, because Musk does like to declare stuff. He says, I'm going to do this. And the problem with that is that it gives an immediate control kick. You know, it's like, hey, I've said this and people have responded to it, and so that feels good. The problem is that once you've done that, now you're in service of the thing that you said, right? So it's like you declared this is what you're going to do, and that's a trap, because now that you've declared it, now you've got to do it, which means you're actually now less in control than you were before. So you get this kind of push-pull dynamic here. This could be an explanation of when people make a big declaration of something that they're going to do and then don't do it. Someone once, I think it was on Quora, asked the question, why is it that people say they're going to do things and then they don't? Control. I'll run through that, because this isn't particularly about Elon, but it's about the point of control. But you can see how it fits in with what I'm talking about. So, if you ask somebody to help you, right? They have a choice. They can either say no, or they can say yes. Now, depending on how much of a control they're into the control game, you can see that if they simply say no, it's the end of the matter. And they have no more influence over the thing at all. So if they wish to extend the control, what they can do is simply say, sure, I'll do that. By doing that, right, they have taken control of the situation, at least in the short term. But the morning after, it's now nagging at them. Well, I did say I was going to do this. But, you know, if I do as I've said I would do, that's actually, they're in control, not me. Oh, now just bear in mind, this isn't the only way people think. What I'm talking about here is a kind of psychological trend, or something that needs to be considered, right? There are people do work through this, and there do exist people who will actually follow through when they say that they will help. And if you ever find someone like that, remain their friend at all costs. But anyway, the point is, right, that they have offered to help, but now they're in a position where they are no longer as in control as they were before, because they have both their own agreement, their own commitment that they've declared, and it's also to do the bidding of another person. Less control. Now, if they want to continue that game, they can't really say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do it after all. Yeah, people don't like to say that, just because, you know, they've given up, haven't they? They've said they were going to do something. The other person's going to have something over them now, you know. The game stops, and there is a loss of control of image. So what you do, if you're not going to follow through, but you want to maintain control, you string it along. So excuses, delays. No, I'll get to it. No, I'll get to it, because that's what you have to say if you want to continue the control game. Oh, I'll get to it. Oh, yes, yeah, oh, okay. But it just drags on and on and on. At this point, a certain point, the person that is waiting for this help, of course, is getting frustrated. But you can see how the situation is firmly in the control of the one who offered the help that isn't actually helping. At a certain point, this will break down. You know, either the person who offered the help will do it, do the work. And again, if they are of this, I'll call it a pathology, because I think it is a bit silly, really. But if they are of this pathology, if they do it, they will do it as grumpily as anything. They won't do it gracefully, because to do it gracefully means you've got a choice. Which gives greater feeling of control? To do it beautifully or to do it grumpily? And if you do it grumpily, what you've got there is a feeling, yeah, I'm the one who's a boss around here. I don't know why I should be, you string it along. Of course, eventually what could happen is that the person has had enough and says, I'm having to find someone else to do it. And at that point, the problem is that the control is being taken away again. So what you might find at that point is they'll go, no, or they'll say, I hope you weren't talking about me. Or I had that happen once. I was talking about them, but I didn't say that, but it was just a comment I posted. It was just about probably this particular topic, and I had been actually thinking about them. But it was like after such a long period of time. But that was the interesting thing. In this particular case, I'd offered to pay someone. So it's not even a case of, work for nothing. It's like I'd offered to pay them for it. But of course they said, no, I'll do it for free. And that was beautiful. I'll do it for free. No, you won't. You're not going to do it for free. But I took them on that. I like to take people on their word a lot. Yeah. So in the end, it didn't happen. But the problem is at that stage is that if you do take it away and they'll tug a bit, and then if in the end that doesn't work, they will be disgruntled, because again, this is just continuing the control thing. It's like, I don't know what they expect. It wasn't like I was getting paid for it. Whatever maintains the control. You see where I'm coming from. So we go back to Elon Musk. Well, you look at that. So to recap, he's using Twitter, and Twitter is in control. So he considers buying Twitter. Then he says he's going to buy Twitter. And now the narrative is controlling him. So he's got to try and figure out something. So then you come up with the excuses. So it's like, this, that, whatever. Unfortunately, and this, I get, it's weird why it ended up in writing. It must have been the feeling of taking control. So he had the $44 billion deal was locked in, and with a penalty clause of $1 billion. He might have been better off just paying that, maybe, I don't know. It was clear he didn't want to buy Twitter anymore. So after all of this thing, he didn't want to buy Twitter, but he had committed to buying Twitter. So then we get the stories about, it's full of bots. Okay, I don't know. You get legal action, right? We're going to court. And when the court case started, then it was revealing all the texts from Elon Musk on the topic, information came out. So he's losing control of the narrative. It's like, so what you do, in the end, for legal reasons, and you can argue, they settled in some manner. He ended up buying Twitter. So then he owns Twitter. He makes his grand entrance with a sink. Now, do you think it's like that whole thing with this? Let that sink in. That whole thing is basically saying, I am now in control. And at this point, what's the first thing that he does? He fires half of the staff. Which you can say that's a really good move for ensuring control. But it turned out that he was firing people that he needed. So then having done the let's fire the people, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, we actually needed these people. So then there's try to bring them back. Can you see what is going on here? It's like an oscillation. Do you know what I mean? It's like today I take, and then, oh, look at the consequences. I need to give, and now I need to take it back. So what you'll see is a pattern where there will be, people will be fired, then rehired, and then fired. It's going to oscillate. You take control, the control produces a burden. The burden is reducing your feeling of being in control. Shed the burden, but shedding the burden now means that you've lost control, and so you take it back, and you get this oscillating thing going on. And a great deal of instability that's driven by this control thing. And I actually think that it drives everybody, ultimately. Unless people learn to let go. We can't control everything. I'm still exploring this whole topic, but I think when we look at the question of happiness, right? What brings happiness? It feels like happiness doesn't come when you are fussing about control. In fact, this does bring up the question of what happiness is. Let me try something here. Because it could be that we could say that happiness is basically an absence of anxiety. I think that's a bit simplistic, but if we go with it a minute. Let's say anxiety, or let me put it another way. Anxiety is something that would that does not allow happiness to happen. Okay, so we have to get rid of our anxiety. Let me put it that way. Anxieties, control, the desire for control, the feeling of not being in control, the patterns around control, they all, I think, encourage anxiety. When somebody is anxious, there's a kind of oscillation that gets set up in their mind. You know, I mean, we've all been through it. We go through a stressful time at work, or we said something, or in a meeting, you're wondering, oh, how do people think about that? You know, so I was terrible at that. I'm a little bit better these days. But, you know, always questioning what it is that I had said, you know, and wondering, you know, how it went down or how it was interpreted or whatever else. And the anxiety, within the anxiety, it goes around and round in your head. Well, that kind of going around and round is like an oscillation. And Alan Watts put it this way, which I think is a fairly good analogy. He would take, he had a TV show in, I think, in the 50s. Or maybe 60s, I don't know. But anyway, he took the camera and made it face the TV monitor, the monitor that they use in the studio. And if you do that, you get this kind of replicating pattern, because it's taking a picture of the picture that it's taking. So, you know, and then each frame is delayed by 50th of seconds, and so you get all these kind of weird, you know, visual feedback patterns. And he was using this as kind of an analogy for anxiety, that basically when we have anxiety, that kind of thing is happening in our minds, that we are self-conscious, right? And we're in effect reflecting back on ourselves what we are thinking. We're thinking about what we are thinking, right? And so then you go, and you get a lot of tension from that. You can see how there's a connection between that and this theory, anyway, that I have about this destructive cycle of control. And so if you want to be happy, you need to sort of cut that out, not do that. And this is tricky. From a very early age, most people are trained to be afraid. And fear is a good trigger point for, anxiety. We're trained to be afraid of money, or, well, I mean, not having any money, but see, the point is that it's the same, really. If you're afraid of not having any money, you become afraid of money. It's, you go, oh, I've got plenty of money now, I need to be careful in case I lose it. Right? We really set ourselves up as a society for these kinds of anxieties. So what we don't seem to do so well is help people to let go. If you had the golden egg-laying goose, the thing to do would be to look after it and figure out good things to do with the golden eggs it lays. And you start peering at it and wondering, can I get to the eggs inside? That's where the trouble begins. Elon Musk right now has completely dismantled the goose. It's still sort of working, but it feels like he's kind of hacked it up, right? And it might be that he'll end up with a better goose. And I'll just say that some people are masters at doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. Just leave that there. It's a theory I have about certain people that they might actually be a force for good, but with unwise wisdom born out of a lack of wisdom is sometimes a thing, because wisdom is complicated. But anyway, so it's like that anxiety thing, that control that leads to anxiety. There's the other way, which is and it's often difficult, but it's to let go. And basically say, it's okay. I do not need to be consciously aware of everything that's going on. I do not need to know how the golden egg-laying goose works. I do not need to worry about whether it will be here tomorrow and it will lay an egg tomorrow. If it decides to go away, that's its choice. I'm not going to worry about that. You see, the funny thing is that when you do that, if you treat the things which are precious to you so that you're willing to let them go, as in the sense you're not trying to control their relationship with you, try to make sure they don't go away. And this is very true of relationships, right? If you do that, then you can actually enjoy them. Or to put it another way, because I'm looking at happiness, right? Yeah. So, and this topic is that if you want to enjoy the golden egg-laying goose, I guess what you need to do is to not hold on to it too tightly. It's not to be dependent on it. That if tomorrow it isn't in your life anymore, then that could be. But don't let that spoil what you have today. It's very, relationships, it's so critical. Many relationships get destroyed by the control dynamic. And it presents in many ways, right? So it's like using love as a weapon, in a way. When somebody loves someone else, what does it actually mean? Or when two people are in love, what does it mean? Well, there's a kind of a healthy version of that and an unhealthy version of that. And the unhealthy version of that is codependence. I'm not an expert in this, but it's like, that's my understanding, right? Codependent relationship is because there is a dependency that goes both ways. But you can say, well, of course we depend on each other, but that's not what is meant. It's that a person is going to be anxious. Oh, of course I'll be anxious. I love the person. Yeah, this is difficult to talk about. It's sort of like, it's not that. I think a way of framing it is, the question to ask is, are you trying to control them? So if you're in a relationship and you are trying to control the other person, common way is to get them to change. That's obviously a form of control. Can you get them to change? Presumably to be, more suitable. It's like, can you improve the golden egg-laying goose? It's the same thing. And if you are trying to change the other person, that is never going to work. This, incidentally, is also true in business and in teams and in companies. And it's tricky. I did mention the thing about Alan Watson and improving oneself, I think the other day, didn't I? And the fact that, really we can't improve ourselves because we're the ones who need to be improving. So by what power do we improve ourselves? But there is another side to it, which is that it's almost impossible to change anybody. If you are trying to achieve organizational change, it's painfully slow because people don't change. The habits remain the same. And I'm not saying it's hopeless. It's like psychotherapy, right? It can work, but it's very slow progress, and you need to be prepared for a long, hard slog. But that's a different thing. If you're talking organizational change in companies, that's one thing. If you're talking about a relationship with an individual, with someone else, you will get nowhere if you try to change them. The rationale, by the way, there is a good rationale for this, a good explanation for this. If you fall in love with someone, then you fell in love with them as they are. So if you then try to change them, why would you change them? You fell in love with them as they were. If you change them, they'll be different, and you're likely to actually love them less. Right? Another question that comes up with that is when couples have a relationship and then decide to move in together or get married, and suddenly things become unstable. Why? Well, it's actually because you need to consider that when you have a relationship with someone, that person is more than just the physical them. This ties in so much to a truth about how we partition incorrectly people from their environment. One of the reasons why moving is really stressful, it's one of the most stressful things, right? Moving is stressful because it's actually changing it's like relocating yourself is actually changing yourself, because you are not just you are the combination of you and the environment you're in. If you live in a house, the house is part of you and you are part of the house. We're not accustomed to thinking in this way, because we're accustomed to just thinking like you have an individual and you can take them here and you put them over there and you put them there. And this happens in companies too, right? It's like, oh, they're working here, can we just put them over there? It's like, zzz, 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 you know. What needs to be considered is that people are more than just individuals. They are what Alan Watts would call organism environment, which is the combination of the organism and the environment that they're in. Well, if you fall in love with somebody, that person is actually more than just them. It's them and their lifestyle, their job, where they live, the house they live in, the way they live in the house that they live in. This is all them. And you have to respect that whole thing. So you can see how then if two people could be having a great relationship, right? And then they say, no, it's time to move in together. And things, it can work out, but it's going to be traumatic, because it's suddenly these two people are not whole anymore. They have to create a new whole, right? The couple and their house and environment that they live in, right? And you have to get all that together, and then, and that's absolutely fine, and you can figure that out. But the point is you shouldn't rush it. It's that rush. Don't rush. Again, why would you rush? Control. Okay, you want to get into control the thing. You shouldn't. That's where anxiety then happens, that you end up with stress and misery. So you want happiness? Let go. Let things happen at their pace, that they will happen naturally. Like, go with the grain is another way of thinking about it. Go with the flow. It doesn't mean that you don't influence and don't, control or have any. Influence is a better way of putting it. We are influencing things all the time and we don't even know how. You go and meet somebody and you have a chat and you say things in this chat, and then afterwards you might go, why did I say that? And it's like, there was a reason. Just because you don't know, you can't verbalize it, doesn't mean it was wrong. There's so much going on in our minds that we're unaware of. The consciousness is a thin layer. It's very thin layer of what is going on. It's just a fact. We don't even know how our brains work. I think it was something really interesting I saw on YouTube recently. It was about research where they haven't been able to pin down where memories are. Did you know that? They don't know where the memories are in our brain. They've done experiments where they scanning the brain, say, this is we see where this lit up for that memory. And so they cut out that cruel things to do, but they cut out that part of the brain, and it's like, no, they still remember. In fact, they found that the memories move around. There's sort of fluidity. It's not in a particular location. It's like there's a whole sum of things going on. Or I'm slightly digressing here, but not really. It's like, where are these words coming from that I'm saying to you right now? I do these things without a script. Where does it all come from? I'm not reading from anything. So is it my conscious thoughts? Wait, is that it? No, the truth is like playing a musical instrument or walking down the street or driving a car or any of these things. It's like you do it and it comes out. And the trick is not to get self-conscious, as there's a danger now, because now I'm talking about the fact that I'm actually talking to you and coming out with these things spontaneously, and then a thought is going to pop into my head that's going to say, Oh, but what happens if you hesitate too much? I mean, it'd be a shame that you've got this far without any edits, and suddenly you're just going to stall and not know what to say. And that is always a danger. But yeah, point is that this whole control thing is to a great extent an illusion. You can call it the illusion of control. Because you have a thought, it doesn't mean that you fully understand why you had that thought, right? Similarly to saying that where these words come from, they're not coming from my consciousness. Of course not. I'm aware of them when I say them, and then I feed that awareness back in to the thing up here to figure out what I'm going to say next. I mean, that's so there is an awareness, and consciousness plays a part. But the words themselves, they just seem to come out of nothing. Well, it's not out of nothing, it's out of the whole brain. It's out of the whole system. And you need to trust that. This is trusting your subconscious, trusting your whole brain. If I was to pick apart how I'm choosing these words, I wouldn't be able to speak. If I try to control the means by which I'm doing this communication right now, well, I can't, and that's why I'm able to do it without stuttering, right? It's because it just is. But there's no way that you could consciously control everything, right? So in a similar way, it's like that, if you want to be healthy within yourself or within a relationship, or you want to have a healthy team, or you want to be a healthy CEO of a company, right? And this is something separate from success, whatever that is. I'm talking about healthy. I'm talking about a deep-rooted sort of happiness or, contentment or whatever, positive things rather than the anxiety. Then you need to let go. And that's what this let going, what I mean by this let going, is actually you need to trust. You need to trust yourself. You need to trust the whole of yourself. You need to trust you, your house, your lifestyle, your job, your team, your country, humanity. You have to. That's really hard to do, but and again, that doesn't mean you're sort of like, just rolling over and just taking it, whatever. But what it means is that you cut out the anxiety because you're not trying to control every little thing. You are trusting that the whole organism is going to figure it out. And in a way, you can think of the whole planet as being one big organism. We can say that we, in humanity, are billions of individuals that form one organism. And if any alien from another world, should they exist, which they probably do, because I think it's an arrogance. I'm not sure that they ever visit us, but it's an arrogance of the highest order to think that we alone are the only conscious life in the universe. I mean, how much more arrogant can you get than that? So I think it's extremely likely that we're not the only conscious beings in the universe. I mean, but if they were to look at the planet and see what's going on there, they could quite likely conclude that humanity forms, well, not just humanity, but all life on the planet. It just forms one big organism, And it's not good when a individual part of an organism tries to take control. It's not good. There is a way you could look at that within our bodies and cancers. You could look at it that way with a cancer, couldn't you? It's the same. The cancer is that those individual cells tried to take control. They wanted a different DNA. I mean, obviously that's not the way it works in terms of language anyway. It's the wrong way of putting it, but it's just to make a point. It's like, yep, they're taking control instead of being in harmony with the rest of the organism. So anyway, running out of steam maybe on this now, but the point there is you want to replace control with trust. Ultimately, that's what I'm saying. You have the golden egg-laying goose, trust in it. You know, you take over a company that has 10,000 employees, right? Don't immediately hack away at everything unless there's, the company's going to go bankrupt, which is something that, in Elon Musk's case, he was saying. But in that case, he was saying, well, why did you buy the company? But the point is trust in people. And it's better to trust and be disappointed than it is to not have trusted. When you don't trust, maybe I need to do a video on just the topic of trust, because who knows what that means, right? I mean, what does trust mean? But when you trust, you are basically saying you're allowing things that will naturally occur to happen. And if you replace that trust with control, you are necessarily going to break something within the team, within the company, within yourself. Control, looking at it this way, is a bad thing to aim for, right? You can get there where you need to be, where you want to be. You want to find happiness, you want to find a relationship, you want to get a better job, you want to do, I know someone who had an ambition to become a video game programmer, and they achieved their ambition. And you know what they did to achieve their ambition? They worked at it. That's a different thing, you see. Working at it is not trying to control anything. It's the opposite, because what you are doing is embracing a field, a topic, a skills, whatever, an activity. You embrace that activity and you let it control you. I'm going to tie this up because of the subject of games. I realised that I've got a thing I really want to talk about as well on this with relationship to video games, which will come from this. So I think I will wrap things up on this point that I'm getting to. But when you try to take control, you are in effect putting barriers up. It's one of the ways that we control. And again, if you think about Elon Musk and Twitter, right? By decimating the workforce, what you're actually doing is throwing people out of the system. That's not embracing them, that's throwing them out. When the owner of the golden egg-laying goose killed the goose to open it up so they could get at the eggs more directly, that act is splitting, literally, in order to cut the goose open. You have to separate things, right? So this is just a kind of an indicator of where you're going. If the activity that you're doing is creating a separation, then you are controlling. But if you are achieving things without a separation, but the opposite, and I'm not talking about pulling together, because you see, you can't. If you take two things and you try to ram them together, in a way, you are also creating a division, because the moment you grasp something, you're dividing that thing from the environment that it is in. Right? That's why it doesn't work either way. It's like split apart or you force together. In both ways, it's actually involves division. Whereas if you can get things to sort of come together naturally, there isn't. So that's one way of. So this then connects with learning, right? If you are trying to learn about something, you bringing the thing to you. And this is the exact opposite of, division. You embrace the thing. And this comes back to video. My battery's nearly dead. This comes back to the thing with video games, right? It's that I often like to say, don't force your will upon the video game, but ask the video game what it wants to be. And that's the same thing again. The difference between controlling and this other thing that we kind of need a name for, right? If you want success in anything, try to achieve the success not through control, not through separation or division, but encouraging things to come together. In fact, encouraging people to give up control by listening to other people, by understanding their perspective, by trying to develop better communication and not placing oneself as more important than anybody else, and so on and so forth. And that, to me, I think is crucial, perhaps for the survival of humanity, which is always good to end on that one. So our battery's about to die. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.